Hello kindred longevity lifestyle designers, this is Gavin here with secrets of longevity.com. I've been gone a little while. It's been over a month since my last video. Nearing the end of December is when I put the last one up. We're in February now. I didn't put anything up in January except for one video on my vlogging channel. And yeah, I just took an extended break. It just kind of morphed into that. I've been busy with other projects and things, and I'm looking to get back to the swing of things. And I'm starting off the year with a video on a news article that's actually a study that came out about 9 months ago, even a little more than that, 10 months ago, which was very interesting, and I only just kind of saw it being passed around in a more viral article as of recently. So hopefully there's more research in this type of thing in the future, because I think it's one of the most fascinating areas of nutrition, is looking at our ancestors and doing genetic studies to really determine what they were either consuming or what they had the ability to consume, and these things that give us the information about what their diet looked like. Because there's lots of various little bits of evidence, but there's often conflicting evidence and conflicting theories that result from that evidence. But you've seen me talk about that quite a bit in the past, so this is just an addendum onto some of those ideas. So link number 1 below, and by the way, all the links I talk about I'll number off, and you can find them in the drop-down menu below in the order that I talk about them. And it is an article talking about how the Neanderthal genes that Europeans have, or they tend to have more than other populations around the world, gives them an edge in fat catabolism. So what this means is that if the more Neanderthal genes you have, and it can vary from 0% all the way up to 4%, there's some people 5, even 6, I haven't heard of much higher than that, but 4 seems to be the upper limit. The average in Europeans is like 2.5%, and even though it sounds like a small percent of your overall genetic code, that gives you a tremendous ability above and beyond those who don't have those genes to burn fat. So that's fat for fuel. So what we'd be seeing is a 3 times increase ability to do this. So if you think of someone that was from a more equatorial region that happened to not have Neanderthal genes at all, or very minuscule whatever percentage of them in there, because with the exception of individual tribes that have no influence of, European genetics or any level of basic race mixing, those are the only populations that will have absolutely 0, but most populations have little fragments of different areas of the globe mixed in. That's just what's happened, and that's obviously just a result of traveling and trade over the many thousands of years that humans have been post-tribal or post-agriculture in their development. So that 3 times better fat-burning ability when compared to an equatorial tribe or someone with very little Neanderthal genes, say they were eating maybe 15 to 20% of their calories tops from fat, that means you have the ability as a European to have anywhere from 50 to 60 plus percent ability in terms of your overall caloric intake to be able to process that as fuel and be efficient at it. The Neanderthal species, which if you don't know, branched off from our ancestors back in Africa. Off the top of my head, I don't know the exact time frame, but they moved up into Europe and split into the Neanderthals and the Denisovans, and they moved more into Asia, and the Denisovans are much more recent findings in the mid to late 2000s, but they're basically like an Asiatic form of the Neanderthal, and there's also some Neanderthals that were much more central, sort of Eurasia type region. But modern humans didn't actually come out of Africa till even a bit later than that, and then they rebred to some degree with the Neanderthals before wiping them out as they entered into Europe. So this fragment of Neanderthal genes influences our diet. That's because the Neanderthals were 99% of their diet was animal foods. We don't really see that in humans. Even the Inuit, who had extremely high quantities of animal foods in their diet for many centuries over their time of living in that region, they still, in the summer, eat plants and things, whereas the Neanderthals seem to have subsisted mostly on meat year-round. They would very sparsely eat berries and things like that. But from the research on their teeth and things, it's evident that they were pretty much 100% carnivorous. So by humans interacting and interbreeding with them, while the humans coming up from Africa and the Middle East into Europe weren't by any means carnivorous. They had a certain portion, mediocre portion in their diet, and as they got further north they started naturally eating more meat anyways because it's much more calorically dense and there's less actual foods that aren't animals the further north you go, like tubers and grains and fruits and things like that. So breeding with the Neanderthals gave them an edge in that they could actually process these larger quantities of meat with more efficiency, and that led to modern day Europeans. So the second link below is a video I've done in the not too distant past, about a year ago, on diet and what I feel is my final conclusion on what the ideal diet is for humans all over the planet. And it's of course a bit of a misnomer in the title because I think there's a very varied diet that most people feel optimal with because we have spread across the globe and we have adapted in different regions to different foods in those regions, and we have to respect that if we want optimal health. So in that video I talk largely about breaking things down onto a continuum. On one end you'd have people that are eating a pure fruitarian diet. On the other hand, you have pure carnivorism, Neanderthal diet, or even Inuit diet. And virtually no one succeeds for a lifetime on those diets. Perhaps the Inuit do, perhaps one person in 1,000 who's drawn to that. So what I talk about in this continuum with the two extremes is that right in the middle you could think of that as kind of like the French diet or the Sardinian diet. Actually, even Sardinian diets would be slightly heavier on meat than, say, your typical French diet. But there's, a moderate amount of animal foods, moderate amount of everything. They're very varied. And I guess if you were to think of the macronutrient breakdown, it's pretty equal parts. And then the further you go this way, you get into less animal foods, more carbohydrates, starchy carbs. And the further you go this way, you get closer to paleo and indigenous diets, actually, because the majority of indigenous diets were heavier on the animal foods than agricultural diets, as you see in the Middle East or any of these places where agriculture has been around for a long time and people have adapted to it to a certain extent. But Europeans, because they're much more recent in, they were moving into Europe while the people in the Middle East and even Asia were already developing agriculture and getting accustomed to grains and things, or just a higher portion of their diet in starches in general. So as the Europeans, or soon to become Europeans, were moving into Europe, they came in several waves. So link number 3 below is actually just a bit more information on Neanderthals. It gives that 1 to 4% range. And that's just interesting in that there's some clarifications on what exactly happened and what these different percentages mean. And if you ever want to get that tested and find out what your percentage is, you can always do the Google's 23andMe genetic testing. I've yet to do that. I'm keen to do that, and I'm going to share the results with you guys when I do it at some point in the next year, hopefully. Maybe by the end of spring, early summer, I'll be looking to get that test done. And there's a ton of information you can get with that. I'm not going to go into that, but it gives you the percentage of Neanderthal genes that you might have within you. So as that first wave of people came into Europe, who would become the first Europeans, they were exclusively O blood type, and this was the predominant blood type on the planet. It still is, but the AB blood type hadn't yet moved up into Europe yet, which is what you now see as the predominant blood type in people with lighter hair and lighter colored eyes. So the O blood type, which actually was O negative, there was a genetic abnormality there that spread, and there was, for whatever reason, the selection for that, and that was predominantly the first Europeans, which were the Celtics. So they spread out all across Europe. As we know today, they ended up in the Basque region of France, in the UK, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. But they got pushed out as more waves of people came into Europe that became the later, more modern Europeans. So basically the Celts got not wiped out, but just pushed out and forced into that one far western side of Europe. So the reason I'm talking about blood type, and you can always check out link number 4 below, or actually just check out this chart, which is what I'm providing the link for, is it talks about the O blood type distribution all around the world. And if you've heard me ever talk about blood types and diet, you'd know that because O blood types are kind of the oldest blood type, A, B, and AB blood types came about after agriculture. So the O blood type is a much more indigenous blood type in that you're likely predisposed to eating more along the lines of what your ancestors ate pre-agriculture. If you have an A, B, or an AB blood type, you probably do a little better with various starches and even perhaps grains if they're prepared properly with fermentation and or sprouting. So as you can see in the chart there, there's a lot more O's towards the western side of Europe. There's a lot of O's in other parts of the world too, so if you're not European, and I'm not trying to be exclusionary to Europeans, I think this video has value for anyone, no matter where you are in the world and no matter what your ancestral background is. O blood types have a predisposition to eating more animal foods, specifically meat, less post-agricultural foods, and what I'm getting at here is the further north you go, generally the more animal foods people ate. So if you're both O blood type and Northern European or Northern Eurasian or Northern Asian, you're going to have a need or a requirement to work better, function better on a higher fat diet. And it's quite possible that Europeans with that Neanderthal genes on top of perhaps having an O blood type, on top of having Northern European ancestry, you're going to have the most requirement for fat and meat out of basically any other group in the world. So when I was talking about my video earlier, link number 2 below, if you were to think of that continuum again, on the far end you had the Inuit. I still personally wouldn't recommend anyone do that because vegetables are great. We can eat tons of plant foods, but for me personally, I'm an O blood type. I have my ancestry roots in Celtic and Anglo-Saxon genetics. So I have those two things, and I don't know my breakdown of Neanderthal genes yet, but I'm assuming there's a certain amount of that because it was the Celts who first came in, who had the mixing with the Neanderthals because they were pushing them out. So it's through understanding this that I've had the ability to say to myself, okay, I'm more confident and okay with allowing myself to eat this way, which is so counter the mainstream narrative of exact portions of this, that, and the other thing that seems to work for some people, but not everyone. I'm very much against a one-size diet fits all, as you know, and if you happen to fit some of the qualities that I'm talking about that I happen to have, you might have a similar ability to subsist very well on a higher fat, higher animal foods diet, eliminating the agricultural, post-agricultural foods, and living the way your ancestors lived, essentially, especially when it comes to diet. So I put links number 5 and 6 below just for general interest, just expanding on this topic. But the Basque region of Spain and France, it's a region that's been very homogeneous and separate genetically, and even linguistically. They have their own language that has no ties to any other European language, basically, or even African language, or anywhere. So there's a lot of strange theories around the Basque people, and they actually have the highest percentage of O blood types in Europe, highest percentage of rhesus negative or Rh negative blood in Europe. I'm not going to get too much into Rh negative gene, but as far as I can see, the theories around Rh negative people needing a different diet than Rh positive seems not that plausible. So you don't have to be concerned about that when it comes to what you eat, as far as I can see. But blood type has some effect. I'm definitely not a proponent of the absolute strict blood type diets. I'm not saying you need to do that. I, for example, eat some dairy, and I'm fine with it. I don't have a reaction to it. I've gone periods of time without it, and I found no difference between adding it in and taking it out. O blood types supposedly don't do well on eggs either. I have no problem with eggs, so there might be a predisposition to having allergies to dairy or eggs if you're an O blood type, but if it works for you, go ahead and do it. It's, again, I'm not strict in that sense, but there's a general trend to consuming things along the lines of your blood type if you want to look into that. I'm not going to go into that depth of what AB diets need to kind of lean towards. So if that's something you're intrigued about looking into, it might be beneficial if you find diet just doesn't quite sit with you. Perhaps you've done a lot of different types of diets and you felt good dropping certain things, but you dropped a whole bunch of things when you went too extreme in some fashion. And so you just kind of got lost in the dietary world of making changes to your diet. So I always advocate making small and gradual changes, but if you wanted to really figure out how well your diet fits for you in terms of your blood type, you'd go completely onto that diet 100%, adhering to it strictly from the sense that they talk about in the books on the topic, and you would slowly, once you're used to that after a month or so, add in things that are outside of your blood type and see how your body reacts to it. Maybe you're a B or A blood type, but you do better on higher meat because those are more post-agricultural diets, so you start to bring those in. So I think blood type is fascinating. I find genetics and human history fascinating, and the differences of what our environments as well as ancient history put on us, whether it was genetic influence or environmental influence in shaping what it is we require to live optimally. So that'll be a topic I'm going to continue exploring, and I've been increasingly interested in the genetic side of things, so you can expect more of that in the near future. Basque region of France and Spain, very fascinating. I was mentioning that earlier, that the highest concentration of O-negative blood in that area, and next after that is Ireland, and then Scotland and Wales. And so they have a very similar history in that they were the first Europeans. That's the remnants of the Celts who were all across Europe at one point. They intermixed with the Neanderthals, and that's what I'm talking about, because they would have the highest percentage of Neanderthal blood mixed in. The negative portion of that blood type is not connected to the Neanderthals, and even though link number 5 talks about it, that's the only reason I put link number 6 below, is to kind of counter that wrong theory. So link number 5 is an interesting article. It's not scientific by any means, it's just someone's written it. But there's a lot of interesting ideas there, but they're all theories, and some seem kind of tenuous, and I just wanted to add that extra link just to clarify that one point, because Neanderthals, as far as they know, were positive blood types. They still don't quite know where the rhesus negative trait came from. And while it doesn't appear to affect diet, it's an interesting thing to look into if that's something you're drawn to finding out more about. I'll leave you guys to do that research, and let me know what you think about this video in the comments below. Let me know what your experience has been with blood type diets, whether you had to or still adhere quite strictly to one, or if you found it completely no relevance to your optimal functioning and now you eat a completely different diet. Just let me know. I'd be curious to see feedback on that. So like, favorite, and share the video if you feel so inclined. And with that, I'll talk to you next time. Take care and embrace life without limits.